Join Boise State Public Radio for a concert with blues guitarist and vocalist Coco Montoya at the Treefort Music Hall in Boise, February 13th. This concert is in honor of longtime KBSU DJ Arthur Ballinger, who is retiring after 47 years. Doors at 6, concert at 7 on the 13th of February for a night with Coco Montoya at the Treefort Music Hall. Details at boisestatepublicradio.org.
From the studios of Boise State Public Radio News, I'm Gemma Gaudette. This is Idaho Matters. On Friday, the Ada County Highway District closed down the Eckert Road Bridge in East Boise an hour after they learned of a new safety inspection of that structure. Officials said the pilings that hold up the wooden bridge were decaying fast, and an ACHD commission member said he was surprised the problem had not been found earlier. Now, that bridge is just one of the 3 that cross the Boise River in East Boise, and there is no timeline yet on when it might reopen. Our very own reporter, Troy Oppie, has been covering this story since it broke on Friday, and he's joining us now for an update. Hi, Troy.
Good afternoon, Gemma.
So, Troy, let's just start with the bridge itself. Tell us a little bit about it, and for folks who may not be familiar with that area, where is it exactly?
So this is the bridge. It's the Eckert Road Bridge because it's on Eckert Road, and it is in East Boise. And it's basically the bridge that's right at the entrance to Barber Park, the main summer park where floaters take off during that season. It crosses the Boise River there. There's a separate bridge component that crosses the Reidenbach Canal, but it is the only crossing in that area. To traverse the Boise River, you have to go to the Park Center Bridge to the west, out by Bound Crossing, or if you go east, you have to go all the way down to Highway 21.
So I have to say, Troy, one thing that stuck out to me about this is that it's a wooden bridge. And I have to say, I have driven over that bridge more times than I can count. Had no idea it was a wooden structure. So with that said, tell us about that and also how old this bridge is.
So it was built in 1954. The support structure underneath is wood pilings, timber pilings, concrete as well. It was expanded and reinforced with some steel in the mid-90s, according to some inspection reports that I've been reading published by ACHD. And what they found during this inspection, which was conducted the week before November by a third party, that 22 out of 48 bridge pillars had moderate to severe decay. And on the center pier of the structure, 5 out of 6 timber piles on this center pier were exhibiting severe decay. That is much greater, much more rapid decay than they had found when they do these detailed inspections every 5 years or so. That took a while to get checked, double-checked, and then published. That got handed off to the folks at the Idaho Transportation Department. On Friday, they connected with the Ada County Highway District to let them know what they found in that inspection, and it was determined that in the best interest of public safety that they should shut down the bridge.
And Troy, they did this inspection because ACHD was actually looking at replacing this bridge before they had this information.
Yeah, the last time they did some of these, they drill in to check the core of these timber pilings, and they last did this in 2020 based on documents, inspection documents published by ACHD, and they found some decay, and they knew they were going to have to replace this bridge. An ACHD spokeswoman told me that they were thinking, 5 to 10 years. They were going to start the process of concept design and what do we want to do with ultimate replacement sometime in the 5 to 10 year window. And the inspection report that they received last Friday obviously changed that and sped everything up.
Troy, this is so interesting in the sense that they closed this bridge an hour after they got the safety inspection. And I point that out because, I'm talking upwards of 20 years ago. I remember reporting on the Broadway Bridge in Boise, which is under the control of the Idaho Transportation Department.
Yeah, state highway, yeah.
It had gotten a very low grade from a federal report. It took about another 10, 15 years before that bridge was completely redone, rebuilt, and up to code. With that said, that bridge never closed down. So I am assuming they saw things in this report that they were like, this is too dangerous for this bridge to remain open.
Yeah, the recommendation from the inspection was that it be weight limited to 3 tons. And so the director of ACHD, Ryan Head, basically said, that's a pretty standard loaded utility pickup truck. Or, he said, my minivan, when fully loaded with passengers and stuff, is probably right at 3 tons. And so they made the executive decision, as opposed to putting a weight limit and trying to enforce that on the bridge for the indeterminate amount of time before they could get it fixed, that it was just safer to shut it down for everybody. Because, school buses, emergency vehicles, obviously construction vehicles in that busy area of Harris Ranch there are all crossing this bridge, and to try to enforce that they would have to detour, but, a standard passenger car might not. It just wasn't that feasible.
And you mentioned ACHD Commission member Dave McKinney. He said during this meeting that he was surprised this wasn't caught earlier. In fact, let me quote him. He said, quote, "It fell through the cracks," unquote. So with that said, do we know the last time the bridge was checked to this extent?
To this extent, it happens about every 5 years. It was 2020, fall of 2020, and there are less detailed inspections that happen every 2 years. The most recent one done in 2022, and basically one of the differences between those, based on the documents published by ACHD that I've reviewed, is that that core sampling of these timber pilings. They drill in and they can take a measurement of the decay in those. In the 2022 inspection, for example, it was noted in there that they couldn't actually do an inspection of one of the piers because of the water flow at the time. So they got the 4 piers on one side of the river, the 4 piers on the other side of the river, but they couldn't get to that center one, pier number 5, because of water flows. And so you have these different levels of inspections that happen about every 2 years or so in that rotation. And that's the primary difference between the inspection. I think it's, as I mentioned, the previous more detailed inspection from 2020 did note some decay in the wooden structure, but certainly nothing as significant as what they found last November.
And Troy, I know that you've been talking with the folks at ACHD. In fact, you were just on the phone with them before we came on the air. I have to imagine that even though this was shocking, surprising, not expected, they have got to be so thankful that this was caught before something catastrophic happened.
Oh, no doubt. You don't want to be on the other end. It's much easier and better for everybody to be reacting to an inspection report as opposed to an accident, certainly. But again, they knew that this bridge, as it stood, was ready for replacement, and they were just expecting that they'd have a couple more years before they really had to get the ball rolling on doing it.
So speaking of replacements, they're hoping to treat this project like the Cloverdale Bridge, which was closed in 2018. Can you just remind us what happened back then?
Yeah, that was an accident on Interstate 84. A semi-truck burst into flames. It happened underneath the Cloverdale overpass and basically rendered the bridge unusable, unsafe. And so that had to be closed down at an instant in 2018. ITD and ACHD and transportation officials fast-tracked that repair, and it was open about a year later, completely reconstructed. And I don't live too far from there. I remember both the inconvenience and the luxury of the new overpass once it was done. But prioritizing the reconstruction, demolition and reconstruction of the Eckert Road Bridge in a similar way is what staff intend to do, and what commissioners basically told staff during their meeting last Friday that they wanted them to do.
Mm-hmm. And Troy, speaking of fast tracking, I mean, last year ACHD told BoiseDev.com that the Eckert Bridge is a critical access point for Ada County. Mm-hmm. And as you mentioned, I mean, this is right at the entrance to Barber Park. So many people use that bridge daily, but I mean, it goes up even more during the summer float season. So how critically important is this access, but also to try to get this done as quickly as possible. And, you can't put a bridge up in a day.
No, you can't. The ACHD spokeswoman told me a few minutes ago they're still working with the Idaho Transportation Department to look at, are there interim solutions? And you think of a temporary bridge that the military uses. Could that be utilized in this situation? They don't know the answer to that yet. 7,000 vehicles cross this bridge every day, and it's they said it's around 15% more cross during the summer months when everybody's using Barber Park and the float season is active. So it is a very important juncture to be able to cross the Boise River in that spot. As I mentioned, school buses, emergency response, they're all, it's a critical route for those. So they're going to want to do this as quickly as possible. We don't know exactly what the timeline's going to be or if they're going to be able to use some type of a temporary bridge before a long-term fix is completed.
So, Troy, even though they were in the process of knowing that this bridge needed to be replaced, what about even plans? I'm thinking of architectural plans for this bridge. I mean, were they even in that phase yet, or is this really starting from ground zero?
As I understand it, they are starting from a relative ground zero. They would have gone into a design concept phase, which is basically the planning stages. Hey, what do we think about doing it this way versus this way? And so you would have those conversations over a period of months or longer in some cases, where you kind of think about all the, what could we do? And instead, they're going to be jumping to, okay, what should we do? What can we do on an expedited process? And they're just moving right into that design phase. Now, they've got to find the money to do it, right? And that's another part that remains in progress. Likely, they're going to be asking the federal government for grants or emergency funding to be able to complete this, but no funding source is off the table.
Okay, so as of right now, Troy, I mean, they have to figure out a plan to even pay for this new bridge.
Right. And that again remains in progress as well. Everything is moving very quickly, but it's all very new. It's as I was talking to the ACHD spokesman on Friday, I said, I understand you guys are really reacting to these things in real time. And she said, yeah, it's very new. It's moving very fast. They do hope to have some additional answers by the end of this week. They've set up a website for folks who are curious to go. That's achdIdaho.org/Eckert Bridge. And that's where they're posting a lot of information. Their conversations with media, the special commission meeting for Friday, and some other documentation is posted there, and they'll continue to update that throughout the process.
My understanding is that the pedestrian part of the bridge will remain open?
Yes, and thank you for reminding me. I should have said that sooner. Pedestrian and bike traffic across the bridge does remain open. Obviously, they'll have to shut that down once demolition begins, but for now, pedestrians and bicycle traffic are still allowed across the bridge.
And for folks who live out in that area or use that route, how to detour. But Troy, there are folks that are going to be expecting that bridge to be open that maybe don't use it use it as often. So again, tell us quickly those detours, because if you've spent any time in East Boise, there are not a lot of routes that get you over that river.
No, there are not. So the preferred alternate route from ACHD is to cycle back to the west and cross the Park Center Bridge and use Boise Avenue or Warm Springs to get back to either side of where the Eckert Road Bridge would be. To the east of there, you can cross the Boise River using Highway 21.
All right. Well, Troy, really appreciate all the reporting you've done on this, and I know you will, of course, continue to keep us updated, so appreciate that.
You're welcome.
We've been speaking with our reporter and host, Troy Oppie, about the closure of the Eckert Road Bridge in East Boise. We will make sure we put a link to Troy's story on our website, boisestatepublicradio.org. And that'll do it for this episode of Idaho Matters. Thanks so much for listening. And just a reminder, you can find all of our episodes wherever you get your podcasts.
We're more than just podcasts and a radio station at Boise State Public Radio. We're a trusted resource and a lifeline for communities across Idaho. It's up to all of us to safeguard public media's future. You can learn more at protectmypublicmedia.org. Together, we can ensure that Boise State Public Radio remains a trusted resource for you and your neighbors for generations to come.